que sí. Anda que dile, chinita, ¿a dónde vivo yo?
Anthony's sharp writing and wry humor has resulted in his nominations for a Crime Writers of Canada Arthur Ellis Award, Saskatchewan Book Awards, and a Relit Award. Flight of the Aquavit was awarded the Lambda Literary Award for Best Men's Mystery, making Anthony the first Canadian to win in that category. In Dos Equis, this 8th book in the series, we follow Russell from the Saskatchewan winter to the pristine beaches of Mexico's Costa Grande in this tale of love, loss, lies, and coming home. We are so very pleased to have Anthony Bedalka here tonight to read from his book and to speak with us about his work. Please welcome Anthony Bedalka.
Thank you, Marcy, and thank all of you for being here. I tend to try, when I'm writing each of these books, to give each one a very distinct flavor. So, for instance, there's one book in the series that I think is probably the spookiest. One is probably the funniest of the group. One has a little bit more romance in it than some of the others. This book I consider my caper book. So think Ocean's 11 Russell Quant style, where he has to gather all of his friends and his family and go on this great adventure to Mexico, including his very Ukrainian mother. Now, Quant, not only has she never been out of Saskatchewan, but she's never even been on an airplane. So to get her to Mexico ended up being a bit of an adventure of its own. I will always regret being unable to accompany my mother on the occasion of her first airplane voyage. Instead, that pleasure went to my good friends Anthony and Jarrett. Well, according to Anthony, it wasn't exactly a three-ring circus, but it was close. It all began right at the Air Canada check-in counter in Saskatoon. See, Mom began chatting up the check-in agent as if the woman was waiting there for no other purpose than to celebrate her first plane ride. Then came security. Now, although we'd gone over the many do's and don'ts in great detail, it was as if Mom thought the rules were merely suggestions. The bells and whistles began to shrill at the first sight of her. Firstly, the personal scanner detected several metal objects on Mom's person. Now, according to Anthony, Mom began to describe to the security officer in great, long detail each of the operations she'd had over the past decades to replace hips and knees and various other body parts with metal facsimiles. Her carry-on was locked with a padlock, the kind she uses to secure the diesel fuel tanks on her farm. Of course, she couldn't find the key and eventually acquiesced to the security inspector's request to cut it off with a pair of bolt cutters. Inside, they found a jar of borscht and a margarine container of still warm pierogies. Apparently this was for snacking on the airplane because she'd heard how little they feed you. There was also a full-size aerosol can of Aquanet hairspray. I didn't even realize they made the stuff anymore. And another of Pledge. Don't know why. All of this before even having left Saskatoon. It was late afternoon when the Air Canada flight pulled up to the Ixtapa-Zihuatanejo International Airport. Passengers descended a set of rollway stairs directly onto the tarmac. It was at this point when the first waves of glorious, radiant heat, tasting of sunshine and salt water, first caressed the skin of sun-starved passengers as they disembarked. It was also at this point that my mother's legs began to cramp. Mom grabbed onto Jared's arm, yanking him to the standstill. "Kay, what's wrong?" Anthony asked, alarmed. "Oh, it's nothing, just my legs. Here, hold my bag, prosciu." Anthony held onto Mom's carry-on while she dug around in her purse. Passengers coming behind them, desperate to either get out of the heat, out of their long pants, or into a bottle of tequila, hurriedly zigzagged around the stalled trio headed inside the small terminal building. A guard, armed with a rifle, approached, making a motion with his non-arms-bearing hand, encouraging them to keep moving along the tarmac. Si, Jared said, explaining in passable Spanish that his mamacita needed to get some medicine for her legs. Little did Jared know that the medicine Mom was searching for was in a small tin filled with white powder. The guard's eyes widened as Mom wetted her forefinger, dipped it in the powder, and put it on her tongue. Immediately, he began some speedy Spanish rant that, even without a translator, told Anthony and Jared that he was more than a little upset. Jared, at first a bit discombobulated by what was happening, demanded to know of my mother what she was doing in Spanish. She looked at him confused and answered back in rapid-fire Ukrainian. All the while, the excited guard continued to rail. This went on for a few bewildering seconds until both Jared and my mother converted back to English. And Jared quickly understood that my mother's medicine was actually 3 or 4 packets worth of McDonald's salt, which she'd poured into an old Anacin tin. I guess she'd heard on TV, Dr. Oz or someone, that having a blast of salt as soon as you felt cramps quickly relieved the pain. I mean, as it turned out, the cure worked for Mom. She was fine. The guard was not. Thank you. Not just raise your hand and shout out your question, and I'll do my best to give you an answer or a good lie, whatever I can come up with.
We're coming to me.
Right over there.
I have read all your books.
Yay!
And I hear a lot about, Russell Quant's mother, but what I don't recall hearing anything about Russell Quant's father.
Okay, so what Eldine's question is that she's read all the books, and she hears a lot about Russell Quant's mother, okay, but she's heard nothing about Russell Quant's father. This actually reveals Eldine as a liar. Because quite clearly in Russell Quant number 6, there is a great deal about Russell Quant's father, so I refer you back to your reading, Eldine. And she's my sister-in-law. Yes.
You travel so very much yourself. How on earth do you pin it down to just one location for a book?
I've always believed that the story has to come first. But there certainly have been times where, I've finished a Russell Quant book, and actually it's happened this time when I was done writing Dos Equis, and I've always kind of wanted to put Mexico in a book because I've traveled there so much. So it was nice to finally do that. In that example with Dos Equis, although I've wanted to write about Mexico for a number of years, this was the first story where it fit. So I truly believe that the location has to fit the story. In that example, the story has to come first. I think if I had written a very serious storyline with this book, Mexico may not have been the right atmosphere. Now, to show you what a liar I am, as I was thinking about, so if I write another Russell Quant, where would I set it? Just last spring, I came back from a great month traveling all over Asia, particularly Vietnam really got my interest up, and I took tons of pictures there. I wrote a lot of things in my journal about Vietnam, and I really felt that's where I want Russell to go next. So as I was conceptualizing the outline for what could be the next book, I immediately knew that Vietnam was going to be the place, and I started thinking along the lines of what type of story would fit into the location. So really the answer to your question is that it happens both ways.
Do you plan on doing like a crossover in the future between the Russell Quant books and the Adam Saint books?
You know, actually I have thought about that. The characters are certainly in the same time period, and they're both in types of profession where I think they probably could cross over a bit. It's doing something like that is interesting, especially when you're writing books that have different tones. And as I mentioned, the Adam Saint books I think will be a little bit darker in tone. But certainly Russell Quant, for those of you who actually read the books, has... This is so great. Certainly, the Russell Quant books have gotten fairly serious at times, so I think it could be a good fit. Right now, I would love it if Adam Saint continued on and he and Russell could meet, and we'll see if Aldine ever reads about that. Marcy's going to give you a couple announcements, but thank you, everyone.